Okay, Mom, we're here to discuss some of the important points of your life history. Thanks for letting us come visit you.
You're welcome.
I'll ask you some questions and then you just tell us what your responses are, and we'll have a recording of it.
Okay.
Leslie's here, she'll ask some questions as well. So the first one was, we just talked to you briefly about your grandparents. What do you remember about any of them?
I remember my Grandma Rasmussen, the only one I remember. She was my dad's mother. And she was a sweet lady, but she died right after you were born, Gary. I think she was alive when I had you because she gave me a yellow towel. But it wasn't a baby towel, it was just a yellow towel.
So what do you remember about her as a child? Do you remember anything? Did you get together with her? Or?
Yeah, she lived in Brigham City, and she had a bathtub in her bathroom. See, when I was growing up, we had an outside bathroom, and Hazel and I'd go down there and get in that tub, and thought that was the most wonderful thing we ever had.
What city was that?
Brigham City, Utah, right up here. And she's buried up here in the Brigham City Cemetery.
And what was her name?
Emma.
Emma Rasmussen.
But you didn't know your grandpa?
No.
So he must have passed away before you were born, or?
I'm sure he did, and he had 2 wives, Aunt Nancy, but I didn't know very much about her.
Aunt Nancy was one. Who was the other one?
Grandma.
Oh, okay.
So, like, did he have 2 wives, or one died before the?
No, he lived
before
before
marriage.
Great. So you don't remember anybody on the wild side?
I remember an Uncle Torval and an Aunt Annie. That must have been my mother's brother, and I remember Aunt Virgia. She was my mother's sister. But she was born, I think when she was born, her mother died. I don't know, I can't remember that story.
Okay, so what do you tell us about your parents? Their names and what you remember about them? And
Ivan Jacob Rasmussen was my dad, and Martha Elmina Wild was my mother. And she was a hard worker. She cooked for threshers and haymen, and they really had to work in those days. So did the kids.
Do you know how they met? Your mom and dad met?
I don't remember. I probably heard the story, but I can tell you about the ring.
Okay, tell us about that.
Dad gave her a plain white gold wedding band when they got married. When they got home, she was showing her dad, and he said, well, it's a very nice ring, but you'd have been better off if you'd have bought a sack of flour. And my mother had some gloves on, and one year they went in the wagon to Preston from Mint Creek. I think they lived in Mint Creek at the time, not Glencoe, but Mint Creek. And she lost that ring, and she felt so bad about it. And the next, I think it was 1 year later in the spring, they went to Preston, and there in the mud and dirt, she saw something sparkle, and it was that ring.
Wow.
So she picked that ring up, and she had found it. She had prayed about it all, off and on. She felt so bad. This is what they told me. I don't remember Mother telling it, but I remember the kids saying how bad she felt.
So if your mom cooked for haymen and threshers, your dad was a farmer?
Yes. Had cows and pigs and chickens. And when it was Sunday, if we said, I don't think I'll go to church today, Mom or Dad would say, okay, then you go down and wash the separator and gather the eggs and bring them up to the house. Before they got that said, we were getting ready for church in a big hurry. But my mother got it all done, got the work all done, and she always went to church. My dad was in the bishopric. A lot of times we had to take the sacrament. Now I'll tell you about sacrament bread. Sometimes we'd buy bakery bread, and that was just like eating cake to Hazel and I, because we always had homemade bread. Now it's just the opposite. If you get homemade bread, you're lucky, because bakery bread, you're tired of that. It's more fun.
What's your earliest memory? Do you remember like the first thing that you can remember as a child?
Well, I remember Althea, and my mother was picking strawberries. I think it was strawberries. And that's the first picture I had taken of me. I was sitting by my mother in a big bowl of strawberries.
How old were you, June?
4 or 5. That's why I thought I was always adopted. And then I got thinking, well, they would have adopted a boy. They didn't want another girl. So I decided I wasn't adopted. But Mother used to tell us the story about Hazel. She'd lay Hazel on the floor, or lay me on the floor, and give Hazel and I each a bottle. And she'd go down to gather the eggs or feed the chickens or something. And she'd come back up, and Hazel would sit her bottle down and had taken mine and eaten that. So I tell Hazel that's why she's always been a little plump, and she stole my milk.
Tell us about all your brothers and sisters. Start at the top.
Well, Woodrow was the oldest. He went on a mission, and we all went with to bring him home or to take him there, but I can't remember which it was. And then Thor.
Where did he go?
He went to Denver, Colorado. That's where he met Carolyn. He preached to her dad's funeral. Then after he come home from his mission, he went back there as a salesman selling something and got in contact with Carolyn, and they eventually got married. And then Thora was the next, but Althea was next, and she got married. And Thora used to make Hazel and I wash our neck and ears before she'd fix our hair. She was strict with us. That's what I remember. And then Les came up to do something to the house. We built a new house, moved out of that log house when I was 8 or 10 years old. And we had a new house with running water and everything. And Les came up to plaster it, I think. And Thora would lay on the bed and watch him. She fell in love with him. And he smoked. But Sylvan smoked. He's the one Althea married. But I remember my mom and dad didn't like him smoking, but Thora married him anyway. And then there was Norma, and she married Paul. And then there was Earl, and Mother used to say it was just like having 2 families, because there was quite a space between Earl and then Hazel and I. She said just like she was starting all over with 2 little girls.
So what was your birthday? What's your birth date?
10th of September, 1928.
And you were born in?
I was born at home, I think.
In Mink Creek, Idaho?
Yeah.
In a log cabin.
I don't remember.
But no,
But that's where I lived. But I don't remember. I know I wasn't born in a hospital.
But when you were born, your parents lived in a log house.
In Glencoe.
In Glencoe. How far is that from Mink Creek?
Well, Mink Creek was just another ward, but that's where the school and the store was. We didn't have a store in Glencoe. We did have a church house and a schoolhouse, because Hazel and I used to ride on the back of Blaze, a black pony that Earl would ride, take us to school. And then he'd go to school, and then we'd have to walk home because we got out earlier.
How old do you think you were when you moved out of the log house?
Well, I know how old I was, 8 or 10, when we built our new house. And that's when Hazel and I had our first boughten dresses. And we remember them. We've talked about it. They were kind of a stripe. And it was the first time we'd ever had a boughten dress. Mother used to make all our clothes.
For all the kids?
She made ours. I don't know what she did with the older kids. By then, some of them were married, you know. And we'd go to Althea's, and Hazel would complain and moan and groan, and I'd say, You're the one that wanted to come lay down. Hazel always wanted to go, and I always wanted to stay home where I belonged.
Things haven't changed much in that area.
You know, it's funny because Hazel did all the talking. And then I married DeRay, and he did all the talking, and so I have a hard time sticking up for myself.
So what do you remember about this log home? It had windows and how many rooms?
Well, there was 3 rooms, a bedroom, a kitchen, and a front room. We had a stove in the front room and a stove in the kitchen.
Wait a minute, 1 bedroom and you had 6 other brothers and sisters?
Well, the boys, my dad had built a shanty, wasn't connected to the house, but it was, we called it a shanty, and it was just a small distance from the house, and that's where the boys slept.
What did they do for heat?
We had a coal stove in the front room, a home comfort stove, and we had a coal stove in the kitchen that we cooked on. But I think we only had 1 bedroom, but we didn't sleep in the same bedroom with Mother and Dad, I don't think.
Did the boys have some kind of a stove for heat in the winter?
No, I don't think so. We used to take a flat iron. Do you know what kind of flat iron we had? One of those oval shaped, about that wide. Heavy as could be, and you had a wooden handle that you put on it. We'd heat that up on this coal stove and wrap it up in a towel and take with us to bed because it was cold.
You must have had a lot of irons.
Oh, I had 2. And one day I was going to iron something, and the iron was, I figured, was too hot, so I took it over and run some water on it.
Uh-oh.
I got blisters on those fingers like you would not believe. Hurt. I went downstairs bawling, and so this is after we moved in the new house.
So how
We
far
had a
from the
basement.
old house was the new house?
It was right next door. It was close to it.
Okay. Did your dad build that?
I don't know. I don't remember. We had to go down a lane and over the creek where I was baptized, and then up a little hill to get to the house. We had a cellar at the bottom of that hill where we kept all our, like, squash and produce and stuff that lasted us for the winter.
So what happened to the log home?
I don't know.
Was it still there when you had moved into the other one? I assume it was.
I guess it was, but I don't know. Too bad Hayes wasn't here. She could probably tell me.
She could read her volume and find out. Okay, so you moved into the new home when you were 8 or 10.
Had my first new boughten dress.
Was that for your baptism? Did they buy that for your baptism?
No, because I was baptized in the creek in September, and my dad said, "Now don't cry." He took me out there, and the water was cold, I think, and ducked me under.
Your dad baptized you.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything else about that day? What it was like?
Don't remember getting confirmed. I don't remember having a birthday cake.
Do you remember any birthdays from your youth? Anything you got, or any of your siblings' birthdays?
We'd hang up our sock.
We're talking about Christmas?
A big long, we used to have to wear long socks until all the snow was off the mountains. And we hated to wear those long socks. We wanted to wear anklets, you know, and be like the rest of the kids. We had to wear long socks till all the snow was off the mountains, and then
When
we
you
could
say long,
clear up above your knees. And anyway, we'd hang up this long sock at Christmas time. Sometime we'd get an apple or an orange. One year we got a wicker buggy for our dolls. And I think Mother had made clothes for the dolls. But we had to share the buggy. But we didn't get very much for Christmas. But I remember Dad and Earl, I guess, because I think Woodrow was on his mission or married, got a tree, brought in a Christmas tree, you know. We'd decorate it with those paper chains. We didn't have colored lights. We didn't put candles on it. That'd be dangerous anyway, put candles on a tree.
So, do you remember what's the earliest church going memory you have?
They used to have a spook alley in the basement of the church. Now, I remember we were always scared of that. I was scared of church houses anyway for some reason. My dad was in the bishopric, and he'd always sit up on the stand, and sometimes he'd get to bring the sacrament bread home if there was any left over, and boy, Hazel and I liked that. Isn't that funny?
Mm-hmm.
So most of your siblings were gone then when you and Hazel were growing up.
Yeah, because the day Pearl Harbor, Norma was up to our place. She was married, but she was up to our place when that came on the news.
How did you get the news?
I guess on the radio. Hazel and I used to get our dolls, sit in front of the radio and listen to conference, general conference. Can you imagine a kid doing that nowadays?
Yeah.
They got television, sometimes they won't even sit down and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But we used to watch. We used to watch or listen to Our Gal Sunday and what was some of those others that my dad liked? Amos and Andy and
Oh yeah.
some of those.
Radio shows.
Yeah, well, we didn't have.
That was your entertainment, pretty much.
We didn't
right?
have television.
What did you do for fun as a young kid?
Well, every summer we'd go over to, I don't know if it was Donetta or some hot springs and swim and that. Well, I never did swim, but we'd go in the swimming pool, and that was highlight of the summer when we'd do that.
Did you learn to work hard as a kid?
Yes, you bet I did.
What kind of things chores did you have?
Wash the separator, gather the eggs. We had to wipe all the eggs off and put them in a case, you know. You probably don't know, but they had a case with the
Did you sell the eggs?
divisions. Yeah, oh yeah. And we sold the milk. We had a separator, and we always had cream. My mother would make cottage cheese. You wouldn't believe how good that was. She'd make it into patties. Kind of solid cottage cheese. Now I like my cottage cheese now soft. Soft and runny.
Did your dad sell hay, or what kind of farm was it?
He had a dry farm too, way over and past where our house was. Him and Mother lived there when they first got married on the dry farm. But he just farmed that after they moved down to Mint Creek. And
You say just farmed it as opposed to dry farm. Tell your posterity what the difference is there.
I guess they didn't ever irrigate it. I don't know. Just called it a dry farm.
Waited for it to rain, huh?
What did he grow?
Well, we had to tromp hay and haul hay, and then they'd bring it into. We had a big barn down below the house. The house was up on a little kind of a hill, and we'd have to ride the derrick horse, and we'd ride it out so far, and then they'd say drop it, and then they'd pull the rope and drop the big fart full of hay off of the wagon that we'd hauled it in. Now I don't know if Hazel and I had to tromp hay, but we did.
Why did you tromp hay?
So they could get more on the load.
Oh, I see.
Like you tromp the bushes in, they could hardly get them out of the trailer down there at the dump.
Oh, well, you mean tromp hay, so like they throw the hay in the wagon and then you step on it to mash it down.
Called
Okay,
tromping
gotcha.
hay. Yep.
So he grew hay. That was kind of his thing.
Well, for the cows,
Right.
he had to have something to feed them through the winter.
So his livelihood then.
And if he went out to get a cow that had just had a calf, and we did something we weren't supposed to make her whatever, my dad get a little switch and switch the back of our legs. We minded pretty good those days.
Did you ever go on family vacations?
Well, we either took Wood to Ronnie's mission or went back and got him. That's the furthest we ever went in a car that I remember.
So you had a car when you and Hazel were young?
I remember you
You had
telling
to get
us-
out and crank it, you know. Have you ever heard of cranking a car? Get it
Sure.
to start? And it had I can't remember too much about
But you also had a horse and buggy, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, and in the winter we'd ride on the sleigh, the runners of the sleigh, and back of the sleigh. we'd have a big party at Christmas time, a ward party. They put the kids on the benches to sleep, and the little kids would have Santa Claus come, and just to have a big party. Get like a candy cane or something, and that was a big treat. We used to make honey candy though. Boil honey until it was, then we'd stretch it till it turned a light color, and then we'd
Like taffy?
roll it in rolls and chop it off in pieces, and boy, that was good.
Be hard, not like taffy. It was hard, right?
Got
So you
hard
sucked on
after
it,
a while, yeah.
So tell us a little bit, what was your dad like and what was your mom like? Kind of what were their personalities? What were they? What do you remember about your dad?
Just mom and dad.
Was your dad patient?
But my dad would decide to go to town. He would come in and say, if anybody wants to go with me to town, and be ready in 15 minutes. Well, sometimes Mother would have bread, bacon or something, but he figured when he got ready to go to town, if anybody wanted to go, they'd better get in the car.
And how long of a ride was it to town?
Well, it was about 15, 20 miles.
Which town?
Preston. Boy, we thought that was great if we got to Preston. As kids, because they had, in Mint Creek, they had a store. Had penny candy and I don't know what else, but boy, if we ever got any pennies, we went to that store. Got, guess what's? Cut 2 pieces of candy and a little present wrapped up for a penny.
So you mentioned your dad was in a bishopric, so he must have been a
counselor. I don't know if he was first or second counselor. Now Hazel would probably know that. And I don't know for how long, but they used to keep the bishop for a long time in those days.
Did you read scriptures in your home or pray?
We always had family prayer. We turned the chairs backwards around the table every morning, and Dad would say, last one down has to say the prayer. Boy, we'd run and fall on our knees, but then he'd call on who he wanted to say the prayer anyway. But he tried that every morning to get us in there, I guess.
What's the earliest prophet you remember?
Well, I remember President Grant. Who was before him? But I remember President Grant. Now, if I had that picture over in the Ward Library, I could tell you, but there's room for President Nelson right down there. But then they'll have to redo it.
So what was your mother like?
She was a hard worker.
Was she gentle
hard.
or was she
she
kind, patient? Is that where you got your patience from? Was your mom?
I imagine.
Was she quiet?
She always sewed our clothes, tried them on us. And of course, I'd get Hazel as she grew out of them, which I didn't mind because I had a lot of clothes. I mean, Mother always dressed Hazel in red and me in blue, and she'd make us new dresses to match. I guess she thought maybe we were close enough to be twins.
How close in age are you?
14 months. Hazel was born in July, and I was born the next September.
So you're the youngest in the family?
Yes, youngest of 7.
Did you ever feel cheated being the youngest?
I didn't feel cheated, but I felt like I was adopted. 'Cause they had pictures of Hazel walking around when she was just barely able to walk. And that isn't fair. And I thought,
They got busy with Hazel and they didn't have time to take pictures.
well, then they got busy with me, and I'm sure Mother was probably not really thrilled when she got pregnant, but
Oh, I bet she
I
was.
didn't understand it at the time, but I can look back now and see she probably wasn't real happy, because living on a farm with 5 girls and only 2 boys.
Yeah.
So did you remember that your mom and dad got along pretty well?
Yeah.
Do you ever remember them going to the temple or anything like that?
Yes, you bet I do. They'd get up early and milk the cows and go to the temple. And sometimes Hazel and I'd be left home alone and we'd be scared to death. I don't know what we were scared of.
How many cows did you have?
Whole barn full. Finally, we got a milker, you know. But I had always wanted long fingernails, and my dad had kicked my butt and send me up the house. Because you had to strip them after you took the milker off, you know. And if they didn't like it, they'd kick at you. I remember that. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it's getting awful hot in here. Somebody go turn the furnace down.
What do you remember about school?
Well, there was 4 grades in one room. So I got all through the 4th grade.
Were you a good student?
Yes.
Did you like school?
I did. I remember telling my dad, I can't wait for school to start. He'd say, there, you're wishing your life away.
Did you have friends?
We had a cousin that we'd always walk home with, and she was a little Dickens. She was Hazel's age, but she'd always get the best of Hazel and I every time. Sometimes we'd go home bawling.
How close did they live to you, your cousins?
Well, she was our cousin. She was Uncle Arley's daughter. They had 13 kids.
Wow.
She was a twin, but I think her twin died. But one night, one of the kids sleeping outside, and they didn't even know they weren't all in the house. We used to laugh about that because they had so many kids.
So they lived pretty close to you?
Yeah.
And how did you get to school?
We rode on the back of the horse. Blaze was his name, Black Horse. Then we had to walk home. It must have been a mile or a little more.
Who rode you to school? Your dad?
Earl,
Earl, your brother.
because he was probably in the 8th grade, and Hazel and I were in the 1st and 2nd. I don't think we had kindergarten in those days.
And then, so the school was about a mile away,
Yeah.
and there were 4 grades in the was it a one-room class school?
I imagine there was 2 rooms, because the 4th to the 8th grade wasn't in the room I went to. I was just in the 1st grade.
Do you remember any of your teachers?
I don't remember them personally. Can't even think of their names now.
What was the name of the school?
Glencoe,
Glencoe School?
I guess.
And then after
We
8th
rode a
grade,
bus to Mink Creek to school.
so then there was a
We had
bus.
to ride a bus, but we had to walk up to the corner where the main road was. We lived down the lane. You've been up past our place?
Sure.
We had to walk up to the corner to catch the bus.
Okay, well, great, Mom. We just want to do about a half an hour each time. So we'll come next Sunday and continue. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Been great. Thank you.